why is it that the absolute fastest, deepest emotional connections are usually the ones that are just, well, most likely to end in total freezing silence?
Oh, they're the worst feeling.
It really is. You know the feeling, right? You meet someone, the chemistry is instant, you talk for days about literally everything, and then seemingly overnight, you're just staring at a brick wall.
Yeah, a complete shutdown.
Exactly. So today, welcome to your deep dive. We are looking at the architecture of a guarded heart.
It's a fascinating topic.
It is. And our mission for you today in this deep dive is to really unpack a highly relatable, deeply confusing personal dilemma from a source text we have. We're going to map out the hidden mechanics of mixed signals, emotional walls, and just the exhausting whiplash of intense early connections.
Right, because it's a dynamic that essentially weaponizes our own psychology against us,
Totally.
When people build emotional walls, we just assume they're building them to keep people out permanently.
Like a keep out sign.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But the reality of guarded behavior is, well, it's far more contradictory than that.
Yeah.
We're looking at a text today that forces us to look past the surface level rejection and ask what physiological and psychological function that sudden silence is actually serving.
Right. So let's get right into the foundation of this specific relationship, because the way it starts is, it's crucial to understanding why it stalls.
Absolutely.
So the narrator, this guy who works photography gigs, he meets a girl back in December.
During a gig, right?
Yeah, during a gig. And he notes that they hit it off pretty well. And to pull directly from the text here, they talked for days about literally almost everything.
Which, sounds incredibly romantic.
It sounds like a movie.
It does. But, from a psychological standpoint, that exact phrase,
Yeah.
talk for days about literally almost everything, is actually a massive red flag for future instability.
Wait, really? A red flag?
Yeah, unfortunately. What we are looking at is an accelerated timeline for intimacy.
Oh, okay.
When two people bypass the normal, gradual pacing of getting to know one another and instead dive straight into deep, continuous, soul-bearing conversation.
Right.
They are flooding their systems with dopamine and oxytocin.
But wait, isn't that the goal? Like that intoxicating rush of a new connection where you feel like you've known this person for years?
Sure, yeah.
It feels like you've won the lottery.
It feels fantastic in the moment. Absolutely it does. But metabolically, emotionally, that level of rapid intimacy is, well, it's incredibly expensive.
Expensive. Like it takes a lot of energy.
Exactly. It requires a massive amount of cognitive load to process someone else's entire inner world while simultaneously sharing your own.
Ah, that makes sense.
And this brings us to the most vital piece of context the narrator provides. He knows two things. First, that she was going through a rough patch.
Right.
And second, she has a historical pattern of pulling back when things get, as he puts it, a bit too intense.
Okay, let's unpack this because I look at those two details, the intense early bonding and the rough patch, and I immediately think of like an old house with out-of-date electrical wiring.
Oh, I like that.
You plug in a brand new, high-powered appliance, and that appliance is this sudden, deep emotional connection where you're sharing your deepest secrets for days on end. It's pulling so much power, so much emotional voltage that the old wiring system just can't handle the surge. And what happens? Bam. The internal breaker trips.
Yes.
It cuts the power to protect the entire house from burning down, and you are left in the dark with a blown fuse.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that that's a brilliant way to visualize the mechanics of nervous system regulation.
Oh, really? Nervous system regulation?
Yeah, when a person is navigating a rough patch,
Yeah.
whether that is, career stress, family illness, just internal turmoil, their baseline stress levels are already critically high.
Right, they're already at max capacity.
Precisely. Their allostatic load, which is basically the wear and tear on the body and brain from chronic stress, is maxed out. They're operating with a severely shrunken window of tolerance.
So even a good stressor, right, like a thrilling new romance, it's still a stressor.
Exactly. The brain doesn't always distinguish between the heavy cognitive load of a crisis and the heavy cognitive load of talking for days about everything.
Wow.
It just registers that the system is being flooded.
Mhm.
So when her internal breaker trips, as you said, she suddenly becomes more reserved, the connection fades.
Yeah, the power goes out.
Right. But here is the critical insight.
Yeah.
Her withdrawal isn't a rejection of the narrator's personality or his worth. It is a biological and psychological self-preservation tactic to stop the surge.
I hear you, but, put yourself in the narrator's shoes for a second.
Oh, I know it's rough.
If I'm talking to someone for days, sharing everything, and then they suddenly go cold and reserve themselves, I am absolutely taking that as a brutal rejection.
Oh, 100%.
I'm agonizing over every text message,
Yeah.
thinking, did I overshare? Am I too needy? Did I say something weird?
And that is the tragedy of the pursuit-withdrawal dynamic.
Ah,
The narrator is personalizing what is actually a structural defense
he
mechanism.
thinks it's about him.
Right. She has to shrink her emotional world down to a manageable size just to function through her rough patch. Unfortunately for him, the newest, most intense, and therefore most unpredictable element in her life is this new relationship.
So the relationship is the first thing that gets pushed outside the perimeter.
Exactly. It's the first thing to go.
Man. So if a guarded person's instinct is to retreat and, cut the power when overwhelmed by a surge, what happens when that retreat is physically challenged?
Well, that's when things get tricky.
Because the text doesn't end with them just fading out over text messages. They actually end up in the same room again. The narrator mentions a meetup that happened yesterday.
Yes. This is where the theoretical psychology becomes very tangible
Yeah.
and very, very uncomfortable.
Incredibly uncomfortable. I mean, the narrator explicitly states it was kind of awkward.
Yeah, you can feel it through the screen.
And the reason it's awkward is that he is actively trying to get close to her in person, and she is actively pushing away. It's a literal physical manifestation of the electrical surge we just talked about. He is leaning in, trying to force a return to that December intimacy, and she is stepping back to protect her blown fuse.
Exactly. He's trying to repair the faded connection through proximity.
Right.
In his mind, physical closeness will reignite the spark. But because he fundamentally misunderstands her withdrawal,
Because he thinks it's a loss of interest.
right, rather than a lack of capacity. So his approach feels to her like a massive invasion of the safe distance she just worked so hard to establish.
Oh, wow. So he's scaring her, basically.
Yes. Her nervous system is already screaming that the voltage is too high.
Yeah.
And he is essentially trying to hardwire the connection back together barehanded.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
She doesn't just physically step away or stand there in hostile silence. She introduces a highly specific third element into the dynamic.
Ah, yes. The friend.
The text tells us that all the while he is trying to get close to her, she keeps mentioning a mutual male friend who is right there with them.
Yes, the former colleague.
Right. A guy who used to work with her is a friend of the narrator and a friend of hers. And not only is she constantly mentioning him, the narrator observes that she seemed much more interested in what he had to say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my immediate knee-jerk reaction as a reader, and certainly the narrator's fear, is to think, oh, great, I've lost out to the coworker. She's into the other guy.
Which is a very natural assumption to make.
But let me challenge that assumption. Is she actually interested in this mutual friend romantically, or is she just using him as a conversational human shield? Because the narrator's physical approach yesterday was just way too overwhelming.
If we look at the behavioral patterns established earlier in the text, the conversational human shield theory is the only one that structurally makes sense.
Okay, tell me why.
Let's analyze the function of this mutual friend. He's a former colleague. He is a shared platonic acquaintance. By definition, his presence represents emotionally safe, neutral territory.
Because there's no intense, late-night, soul-bearing December history with the coworker.
Exactly. There's zero high-stakes romantic tension with him. When the narrator tries to close the physical distance, he is applying pressure.
He's turning up the heat.
He's turning up the emotional heat. And for a guarded person who is already in a rough patch, that pressure triggers an immediate flight response.
But she can't just run out of the room.
Right, she's trapped in a social setting. So by pivoting her attention to a neutral third party, she successfully diffuses the romantic tension without having to actually flee the room.
Wow. It's a pressure valve.
Yes, precisely.
She is bleeding off the overwhelming intensity of the narrator's focus by routing it through a grounded, totally mundane, no offense to the mutual friend,
None taken, I'm sure.
but emotionally boring conduit. She can talk about like spreadsheets or benign office updates, and that requires absolutely zero vulnerability.
It is a highly effective social tactic for nervous system regulation. She isn't necessarily rejecting the narrator's underlying presence.
She's rejecting the intensity?
Exactly, the intensity of his current approach. Focusing on the mutual friend allows her to remain in the social situation, physically near the narrator, without having to manage the heavy emotional demands he's placing on her.
But think about the agonizing frustration for the narrator in that room.
That must have been excruciating.
Seriously, from his perspective, He's putting his heart on the line, trying to bridge the gap with this girl he felt a massive connection with. And she's basically stiff-arming him to talk shop with a former coworker.
Yeah.
You can just feel the confusion radiating off the source text. Most people in his shoes would walk away from that afternoon thinking, message received, we are entirely done here.
And it would be the most logical conclusion to draw based on her physical behavior. I mean, she established a boundary that was practically made of concrete.
And this is the crazy part.
Yeah.
Just when the narrator, and frankly us as the readers, might assume this connection is completely dead in the water, we get a massive, jarring pivot.
The twist.
A conflicting action that completely recontextualizes her entire guarded nature.
The post-meetup communication.
The phone call. The text says, later, after we all left for home, to my surprise, she called to see if I got home safe.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this all mean? She literally spends the entire afternoon physically dodging him, using a mutual friend as a human shield, and then the minute they are physically separated and in their own homes, she picks up the phone to initiate care.
This is the defining paradox of the guarded heart, and it perfectly illustrates the difference between emotional capacity and emotional desire.
Okay, I have an analogy for this one, too.
Let's hear it.
It makes me think of a heavily fortified castle.
Okay, a castle.
Right. It's got massive stone walls, a huge moat, and the drawbridge is pulled all the way up. The narrator trying to get close to her at the meetup was like him standing at the edge of the moat, shouting for her to lower the bridge.
And she couldn't do it.
No. It was too threatening. Lowering the bridge all the way down means the entire army could rush in. It's too much pressure.
Right.
But once the physical threat of him standing right there is gone, once she's safely inside her keep, she can crank the wheel and drop that drawbridge just like 1 inch.
Oh, I see.
It's just enough to slip a tiny note through that says, hey, did you make it home safe? It's a safe, controlled way to show that care still exists behind the walls, but strictly on her terms.
That is a phenomenal way to understand the mechanism of remote intimacy. The physical and emotional distance isn't a sign that she doesn't care.
Right.
The distance is the exact prerequisite required for her to show that she cares.
Because the distance makes her feel safe?
Yes. In person, his physical and emotional proximity was a threat to her overloaded nervous system. She required a conversational buffer to survive the interaction.
The human shield.
Exactly. But once that physical distance was achieved, once the pressure of his immediate expectations was removed, her underlying feelings of connection finally had the safety required to surface.
Yeah.
A got home safe call is an act of intimacy that does not require vulnerability.
Wait, say that again? An act of intimacy that does not require vulnerability? That completely reframes a basic, polite text or call.
It really does.
On the surface, asking if someone got home safe is just basic etiquette. But in the context of someone who just spent 2 hours actively dodging your presence, it is a glaring neon signal. It means the connection from December didn't actually die. It is just trapped behind her structural defenses.
Which leads us directly to the narrator's core dilemma, the agonizing bind he finds himself in at the conclusion of the text.
He is incredibly torn up about this. He states he hasn't felt this intensely for a while, admits that what he is feeling might, quote, maybe even be love, and he cannot get her off his mind.
Yeah, he's really struggling.
And here is his explicit plea for help, quoting the source again. I'm not sure how to get her to drop her defenses because they are pretty high.
And this raises the most critical psychological question of the entire deep dive. He wants to know how to get her to drop her defenses.
Right.
If we look at the title of our source, The Architecture of Guarded Hearts, we are reminded that emotional walls are not accidents. They are built structurally, purposefully, to handle a specific load.
Like we said earlier, they are load-bearing walls keeping her functioning during her rough patch.
Exactly. They're holding up her emotional stability. The narrator's stated goal is to get her to drop them. He wants to dismantle the architecture.
Yeah.
But emotional defenses cannot simply be bulldozed by the sheer force of someone else's intense feelings.
Even if those feelings are genuine love.
Especially then.
That's the truly tragic part of this narrative. The narrator operates under the assumption that if he just shows her how much he cares, if he just pushes a little harder and proves his devotion, she'll realize she is safe and gladly lower the walls.
But we already have the empirical data on what happens when he pushes harder. We saw it at the physical meetup.
Right, the awkward yesterday.
When he attempts to bulldoze the distance and force intimacy, she doesn't melt into his arms. She panics, pushes away, and deploys a human shield. His intense feelings are the exact high voltage that tripped her internal breaker in the very beginning.
So by actively trying to dismantle her defenses to prove his love, he is ironically proving to her nervous system that she absolutely needs those defenses against him.
That is the cruel irony of avoidant or guarded attachment dynamics. The guarded person needs to feel completely assured that their boundaries are respected before they will ever consider lowering them of their own accord.
Wow.
The got home safe call was her dropping the drawbridge 1 inch because he was finally at a safe distance. If he rushes the bridge the second she cracks it, she will pull it up and bolt it permanently.
Man, this has been an incredibly revealing journey through the mechanics of a deeply confusing relationship dynamic.
It's incredibly complex.
We set out to understand the invisible push and pull of guarded hearts, and I feel like we have really uncovered the psychological machinery operating just beneath the surface.
I agree.
So let's do a quick recap for you, the listener, of the core insights we've pulled from this source material today.
First, we identified the hidden danger of the initial spark. We explored how an accelerated timeline for intimacy, talking for days about everything, acts as a massive power surge.
Right, the old wiring.
Exactly. When combined with a rough patch, that surge trips the nervous system's breaker, forcing a guarded person to suddenly withdraw to preserve their limited emotional bandwidth.
Second, we dissected the agonizing physical reunion. We recognized that her reliance on a mutual friend wasn't about romantic interest in the coworker.
No, not at all.
It was a clever use of a conversational human shield. The mutual friend acted as a pressure valve, allowing her to diffuse the overwhelming intensity of the narrator's physical approach without having to flee the room.
And finally, we examined the paradoxical nature of the got home safe phone call. We learned that for a highly guarded individual, true connection can often only be safely expressed through an emotional buffer.
Like the castle wall.
Exactly. Physical and emotional distance isn't always a rejection. Sometimes it is the fundamental baseline of safety required for them to show they still care.
It is a staggeringly delicate ecosystem. Which brings us back to where we started. The architecture of human emotion is an invisible, highly reactive labyrinth. You can't just look at a stone wall and assume you know what's happening behind it.
Right.
You have to observe the structural behavior, and you have to respect the walls before you can ever hope to understand why they were built.
If you try to bypass the mechanics of someone's self-preservation, you will only ever trigger their alarms.
And that leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to ponder as you navigate the guarded hearts in your own life. We know the narrator of our text is desperate to figure out how to make this girl drop her high defenses. But based on everything we've unpacked today about cognitive load, nervous system regulation, and emotional architecture. Based on all of that, when someone's walls are built that high and fortified that deeply against intensity, is it ever really possible for an outside person to make them drop those walls?
That's a great question.
Or does the very act of trying to dismantle them, the pushing, the forced closeness, the insistence of love, just cause the guarded heart to frantically reinforce its armor?
Something to really think about.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep